American presence in this desert 60 kilometers north of Kabul, Bagram airfield has been handed back to the Afghans. The last US and NATO troops left overnight on Thursday.
Before the Americans, the Russians were here, and then they left. Then the Americans came, and now they left. I repeat that this country is ours, and we will protect it without even a salary or facilities.
Built by the Soviet Union in the 1980s, Bagram has become a symbol of foreign occupation in Afghanistan. It was the main airbase used by coalition forces since the US invasion in 2001, becoming a makeshift village with a hospital, cinemas, and even fast food restaurants. Some 100,000 soldiers lived there. This nerve center in the fight against the Taliban will, however, be mostly remembered for housing a secret CIA prison where torture was practiced, something that was acknowledged by Barack Obama in 2014. Joe Biden has pledged a full withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan by the 11th of September, though most will return home before 4th of July celebrations in the US. Asked about the withdrawal timeline on Friday, the US president said everything was going according to plan.
We're on track exactly as to where we expect it to be. But I wanted to make sure there was enough, quote, running room that we wouldn't be able to do it all till September. There'll still be some forces left, but it's a rational drawdown with our allies.
Troops are yet to withdraw from a base located in Kabul. After September, only soldiers tasked with protecting diplomatic personnel will remain there. Others could also be responsible for security in the capital's airport. The Afghan people have mixed feelings about the withdrawal. On the one hand, content at turning the page on this period of their country's history. On the other, afraid of renewed tensions with the Taliban. A particular concern with the US having left no equipment that could be used by local forces and having destroyed anything that couldn't be carried with them.
One step closer to winding down nearly 20 years of war in Afghanistan. Packing up and leaving, U.S. troops load equipment as they pull out of Bagram Air Base. What they aren't taking with them is being destroyed to prevent anything usable falling into Taliban hands, a decision that's angered local officials.
Equipment which belonged to American forces inside the Bagram Air Base has been scrapped. Even some of the buildings were blown up and destroyed. We asked the Americans many times to at least give us the equipment, which was in working condition. They turned us down.
For nearly 2 decades, Bagram served as the heart of U.S. military operations in Afghanistan and was the base for airstrikes against Taliban targets. Heavily fortified with blast walls and barbed wire fences, at its peak, more than 100,000 U.S. troops passed through the sprawling 30-square-mile compound. About an hour's drive north of Kabul, the base was a mini-city with a hospital, movie theaters, swimming pools, and American fast food joints such as Burger King and Pizza Hut. During their time in office, Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump all made obligatory visits to the base, promising a swift victory and a brighter future for Afghanistan. But as the base is handed over to the Afghan National Security and Defense Force, the U.S. military is leaving behind a mixed legacy.
With the U.S. withdrawal, if peace comes to Afghanistan, Bagram can become a strong base for the Afghan Air Force, and they'll be able to control the whole country. But if there's no peace, and fighting continues, I believe that a second wave of resistance will start from Bagram against those groups that don't want peace in Afghanistan.
The handover nearly fulfills U.S. President Joe Biden's promise to have U.S. troops home by September 11th.
For more, let's cross to Kabul and correspondent Nana Moose-Stevenson. Nana, let's begin by listening to the U.S. president who spoke a short while ago, Joe Biden, at the White House.
Philip, clearly this withdrawal is happening quicker than originally planned. Why is that?
Well, there are 2 main reasons. I think the first one is that, remember going back to the Doha conference last year where the Taliban and the United States agreed together for US forces to leave the country, in exchange for which the Taliban agreed not to launch attacks and also to stop collaborating with al-Qaeda. It still remains unclear whether that is the case today, but there is something linking Joe Biden to Donald Trump, who was president at the time of the Doha Accords, and that is the desire of the US to pull its troops out of Afghanistan, saying it's been going on far too long. This is a war that the US has put a lot of energy and money into, and it's time for it to come to an end and for the troops to return home. So Joe Biden wants to get the troops out as quickly as possible. And the original date with the Doha Accords was May the 1st. So why they're stepping up the withdrawal now is because there is concern in the US that this could lead the Taliban to say the US is not abiding by that accord and give the Taliban greater excuses to try to launch attacks and not to respect the agreement that it's signed. And the other reason is also because the Afghan government is putting pressure on the US to pull its troops out because it doesn't want to have to release even more Taliban prisoners after the 5,000 that it's already released if the US troops are to stay there any longer. So Joe Biden said, well, we won't be able to pull them out by May the 1st. This is for logistical reasons. We will push the date forward to the 11th of September, that symbolic date of the World Trade Center attacks in 2001. It'll be 20 years to the day. But it looks now as though those US troops will be gone long before the 11th of September.
What's reaction been from the Taliban so far?
Well, the Taliban, of course, have welcomed this withdrawal today from the Bagram airbase. It's a very symbolic withdrawal because the Bagram airbase was represented everything that the US controlled within Afghanistan and their forces. So the Taliban, of course, have welcomed this, saying it's a positive step, and also calling at the same time for all the other troops to withdraw from the country. NATO is pulling out at the same time as the United States. So 2,500 American troops, 7,000 other forces which are there as part of NATO. The question everybody is asking now, Nadia, is what is next? Does this signal that the Taliban is going to try to step up its attacks to try to gain more ground in Afghanistan? It's a very worrying situation for not only the Afghan people, but also for the Afghan government. And it's also a dilemma for the United States because they know that if they pull their troops out, that's going to encourage the Taliban to launch more attacks. The United States has said, well, we're going to keep funding the Afghan government, the Afghan military, so it can defend itself against the Taliban. But nobody really believes they have the means to do that. So this is really opening the door to the Taliban launching more attacks. The only ray of hope here is that the Taliban may not want to become another pariah in charge of a country if it manages to take control of Afghanistan, and maybe like to return to the negotiating table with the Afghan government to work out some kind of peace accord to therefore have international support and not force more troops to come in to push them back, just as they did back in 2001.
All right, Philip Tell, thank you very much indeed for your analysis.